Welcome back. Coping with COVID-19, and the race is on. And with us for this panel, we have a very interesting combo. We have Dr. Joe Borg from WH Partners, who no doubt deals with a number of operators and suppliers, from the tiny startup to multinationals. So I'm sure he has a lot of headaches at the moment to navigate through COVID-19. And on the other side, we have Trevor, Giorgio, the Chief Legal Officer for Greentube, who's a multinational company, and I'm sure also is dealing with a number of regulatory updates across various jurisdictions. We'll start with you, Joe. COVID-19 has been with us now for a number of months. And what have you seen across a number of regulators?
Well, the focus has been mostly on advertising. So many regulators have issued notices or new guidelines on advertising in order to ensure that operators not take advantage of the situation and basically advertise aggressively in such a period where people are spending more time at home and therefore are more prone to play online. Unfortunately, we haven't seen many regulators giving incentives to operators facing difficulties. We have seen that from the Maltese regulator up to a certain extent. So there were some sort of tax breaks, deferment of tax payments, and so on and so forth. They were also very flexible with operators that wanted to suspend certain types of games from their operations. So that was also a positive thing. On the other hand, we haven't seen much coming from other regulators, unfortunately. So that is probably it's unfortunate. It's quite unfortunate because the industry has to be supported if we want the industry to keep on providing high quality service and also the employment opportunities it offers today.
Trevor, what do you make of the situation?
I would say that I agree wholeheartedly with what Joe is saying. I'll start off from his last point about assistance from regulators. Well, we are licensed in a host of jurisdictions, a host of countries. And whilst here in Malta we have seen not just support, tax support and the likes, but what we have seen is regulatory support. That is an authority which has actually become quicker in its response times during these situations, and an authority which is much more understanding. Unfortunately, however, in other jurisdictions, we have seen changes which sometimes are expected at the flick of a switch. And it's not that simple technology-wise. And changes not just on the advertising front, but also on the responsible gaming front, which there are a number of operators which have taken certain responsible steps at these times. They took their own initiatives. I mean, Greentube itself is part of the BGC, so the Betting and Gaming Council in the UK. And we stopped advertising in the beginning of May in the UK. And now we restart on the 5th of June with more focus on responsible gaming. These initiatives are being taken, but it's as if regulators are not taking much notice of it. And you still see the negative press, you still see the negative stories about the industry in general. So there has been a challenge for the industry. There also have been regulatory changes. So if we break things down, Latvia, they shut down the market. So Latvia shut down the market. Spain introduced an emergency decree on advertising, which actually, one can say, introduced legislation, a draft legislation from back in March. They introduced it now via this emergency decree, which is still ongoing, which has as a main focus advertising limitations, but also some RG measures. Sweden, the restrictions on bonusing. The UK, there's 6 measures which were taken by the GC, especially on the responsible gaming front, including, for example, the compulsory rollout of reality checks, the checks, constant checks which need to be made on your players. That was in the UK. Italy last week announced a new tax on sports betting operators, which is
sports betting.
0.3 or 0.5%.
Increase.
Joe, I'm not sure. I'm not remembering. I think it's 0.5 because initially it was 0.3. Then the federations wanted 1%, and the compromise was 0.5. 0.5% of turnover, net of gaming taxes, but 0.5% of turnover. And this will last till the end of 2021. And they issued it, and we still don't know how we have to pay it. How is it going to be collected? So there have been, I would say, individual initiatives from a number of countries, especially at a European level, which have made it more difficult for operators to cope. And this is on an operational level, because let us also remember the human impact of this COVID-19. The human impact insofar that, I'll use Greentube as an example. Our employees are now in their 11th week of home office. We sent everyone home here in Malta. Let's start with Malta. The moment the schools closed. So schools closed, most of our staff, Maltese and foreign, have children in school, and we understood it was impossible for them to juggle everything. So we said, you can go home, we will actually help you. So we've sent our IT guys into houses of employees in order to set up their infrastructure, especially customer support, because we run all our customer support from Malta, even though Vienna is our base. But Malta runs the customer support as well as other departments. So we set all of this up. Vienna, another challenge, 450 employees. UK, which is our development arm, so another 50 jobs.
This has been done across the board, the work from home.
We have done it across the board, work from home. And unfortunately also Greentube, one of its employees in Austria, passed away with corona. And because I am the chief legal officer, you end up also getting involved in certain discussions, let's not say operationally related, but it is a reality. I mean, we have lost a staff member, we lost a colleague.
Yeah, certainly touching times as well when something like that hits close to home. But we've seen this in Malta for sure. We've seen this also in Manila, where gaming companies sort of self-regulate within the office and take measures that are beyond what government is imposing. How will this be perceived? I mean, moving forward, gaming seems to be a step ahead in making sure that they're facing the pandemic in the right way within office premises we're talking. I mean, Joe, you yourself, not necessarily a gaming company, but a law office who deals with a lot of gaming companies. But you guys also took measures which go beyond what the government imposed in the country. How will this be perceived moving forward?
It was a necessity also because, as Trevor said, you have parents of young children, and ultimately, if you can't leave the kids at home alone. So the parents had to stay at home. On the other hand, we had the funny thing is that we had employees pleading us, look, we would like to do some work from the office. And in fact, we started also transitioning back slowly because we felt that working from home is very efficient. Many people like it, but that little human interaction sometimes is also necessary. And this was quite a learning curve for us because we realized that even the employees themselves prefer, at least most of them, prefer coming a bit to the office at least twice a week, 3 times a week. Some of them, I'm coming in 3 times a week usually. And this balance seems to work very, very well. Yes, ultimately, it's not just about laws, it's also about social responsibility, it's also about respecting our employees, because ultimately, our businesses, especially us as a law firm, uh, our business is based on human resources. So basically, unless your employees are happy and can be productive with a clear mind and with peace of mind, the quality of the work will not be the same. Um, so ultimately, we found this balance as ideal. Of course, for a number of weeks, it was work from home across the board, but slowly, we're adjusting to a new reality where we have employees coming in 2, 3 times a week. Of course, those that are parents and don't have anywhere where to leave their kids, they have to continue this work from home system.
Yeah. Changing a bit subject, you know, a lot of regulators took significant measures in the short run. But probably we all agree, no, that gaming has been one of the verticals that has been the least impacted by COVID. When you compare it to tourism, to the hotel industry, to the catering industry, those have been significantly hit. Do you believe regulators, policymakers, will, in the long run, look at gaming from a different lens because of its resilience to pandemics such as this one?
If I may, I'd just like to clarify something. I'll take again our reality, which is Greentube, part of the Novomatic group. Yes, the remote casino vertical carried on, then as well there were other products, but in our case, Novomatic shut down all of its land-based presences, every single one of them, and that had a huge impact for us. So I wouldn't say gaming per se is resilient, but some verticals survived and managed to push on in these times, because I mean, remote sportsbook, where there were no events unless you were willing to bet on Bangladeshi badminton or the Belarusian third division. I mean, it was a weird time. I mean, things are still not back to normal on a sportsbook front, but you have the Bundesliga, which is now open. If I'm not mistaken, this week horse racing starts behind closed doors in the UK, so that will be a huge push. The football in Italy starts in 2 weeks' time. Same week, Premier League starts, Spanish La Liga starts. So we're soon coming on a sports. We're soon coming back to, let's say, a new normal, because events are going to be behind closed doors. But if anything, my fear is that just like happened in Italy, there was a tax grab on the remote sector, that there will be tax grabs in other jurisdictions, tax grabs which in the short run might look good, but in the long run will have a negative impact. If you go and look at,
and why is that?
I'll give an example. I use examples to illustrate this. So last year, 2019, the UK did the FOBTs change. So maximum stake went to 2 sterling. In the middle of Corona, I believe it was actually last week, they published the results, and you had a reduction in shops of around 19% reduction in shops, an overall reduction in contribution from the gaming sector. So as a package, the gaming sector contributed less to the British economy. And if I'm not mistaken, if I didn't read badly, something like 9,000 jobs were lost. That is one decision, to reduce the stake of FOBTs from a maximum of 50 to 2. That's one decision.
Yeah.
If I
And
may
the shrink.
if you allow me, Trevor and Eman, also,
Please.
it's true that we saw a bit of a spike in
We're talking
online casino,
remote
not
casinos, yeah.
online gaming, online casino,
Yeah.
and maybe poker. Well, you can consider them in the same vertical. But it is also true that as people are losing jobs, and we've seen crazy figures in people losing jobs, ultimately, once people won't find money in their pockets, they won't be able to gamble. So this is a very short-term spike that will probably be followed by a crisis, like the same way it will affect other industries, it will affect online gaming. Because if people's purchasing power goes down, ultimately the industry will suffer.
Yeah, well, Trevor, you touched upon land-based, and across Southeast Asia, we've seen a lot of integrated resorts being slaughtered and thousands of jobs being lost as well. Do you think the time has come for the industry to stop talking about land-based versus online and find ways for the two to cooperate?
Definitely. I agree 100% with you. There is, if anything, if this didn't teach us something within our operations between Greentube and Novomatic, is that we were actually the redundancy for them. We were the only branch for a period of time which was still operational for the Novomatic group. So yes, there is this perceived conflict between online and land-based, but I sincerely hope that this pandemic, this situation, brings about a new normal whereby online and land-based are not seen as in conflict, but are actually seen as partners, and they can actually help each other out, even enhancing the player experience.
Any concrete example that you can think of where the two can find common ground?
So let's, again, you have your players, your land-based player who could possibly continue his journey online. Some operators, some remote operators, for example, in the Italian market, have been more successful than others is because they have a land-based presence, they have a land-based database, which they have married with their online, and they managed to seamlessly shift a volume of those players from the land-based onto the online. So if you have both verticals, you can continue that player journey. You can continue the same experience, well, with a little less social interaction, but you can have the same gaming experience as you have in the shop, at home, or wherever you are.
Joe, anything to add to this land-based versus online perception, reality, call it whatever you want?
I agree with Trevor that now operators are realizing that land-based and online are not versus, but actually are complementary to each other, and are complementary in the sense that I believe there's going to be a time where land-based, for a short period at least, will become a bit more popular than online after this COVID situation, because people also want interaction. The same situation we had with employees wanting to come here and meet with their colleagues and friends. We'll have it in gaming as well. So people will actually miss the atmosphere in a casino. So I believe that this is not a case where land-based is doomed and online is going to take over, or there's a big struggle between the two. Rather, it's important to have both. And those operators that are not investing in both are making a mistake. Also, another mistake is that the mistake that was done by land-based when online started, where they didn't embrace it, I believe that the online gaming industry is doing it now. It's doing it in the sense that it's not innovating enough. The gaming industry in the past 5 to 10 years has done very little innovation, and that worries me. So suddenly we've seen a lot of operators going for virtual sports, like it was invented yesterday. It wasn't invented yesterday, it was invented years ago.
Yeah, it's
we've seen a lot
I like to
of
say
operators going for esports. This is not something new. We've been seeing esports grow for the past 4 or 5 years. So
True.
I believe that this COVID situation is going to improve the situation of land-based because they are going to embrace online more. But also, we're going to see online gaming operators realizing that they have to innovate themselves as well.
Yeah, as I like.
If I may, Eman,
Please.
just to continue on the previous point, on the social element. In fact, which vertical has grown the most during this situation, during the pandemic? Poker. Poker, which is the most social of all products online, because you can chat, you can speak. So poker has seen this huge growth because players were seeking that social element.
Yeah.
Players want the social element. Players look for that social element. And that is why I agree with Joe. The moment the casinos open, with due precaution, but I believe, yes, players will want to go to the casino, not because they have vast amounts of cash which they've saved up and they want to go and play them in the casino, but because they want to go and meet the people they used to meet before. They want to socialize as well.
It's an experience in itself.
Yeah.
It's entertainment.
I wish we had more time. However, that brings us to the end of this very interesting discussion, and I would wholeheartedly agree. I would pen it in the sense that where the CEO failed, where the chief technical officer failed to innovate, I think COVID-19 has succeeded. And with that note, I will leave you there. Thank you so much for being with us, gentlemen.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity.
Pleasure.
Bye.